Hello, Graham Vincent, violin maker and musician. I'm going to talk to you again about sharpening scrapers. This one is for Brian, who basically has asked some questions. Now, when I was at school, I used to think, well, if half the class isn't actually understanding what you're saying, it's not our fault, it's not our problem, it's your problem, Mr. Teacher. I'm going to hold myself to the same standard, and basically, if you haven't understood what I've done in these previous videos, quite clearly I haven't been explaining it very well. So I'm going to have another go. Forgive me, I'll do my best. The secret here is that it's surprisingly simple. And I think once you get the knack, suddenly it's going to be really simple. Okay, so what I'm going to do, I'm not going to use all my usual stuff. I mean, because I have a nice burnisher, which I generally use. I'm going to use a B&Q file. Now, B&Q here in the United Kingdom are basically a sort of a big DIY hardware store. And so these are kind of, cheap and ubiquitous files, but it works quite well. And I'm going to use just a little old screwdriver, the first screwdriver I picked out the drawer, instead of a burnisher. In addition to that, took me about 10 minutes to find my candle. Right, in addition, I'm going to use a bit of candle wax. I could use just a light smearing of linseed oil. I could use a little bit of soap, but I personally use candle wax, just a standard paraffin wax. So I'm going to use a cheap shop-bought scraper, and I'm actually going to start by taking a bit of wet and dry paper, and this is P600, just out of interest. This isn't the first step in the procedure. This is me just showing you that I'm starting with something completely blunt and useless. Right, so this is now the world's worst scraper. Let me just move the camera and show you it in operation. I think we can all clearly see that does not work as a scraper. Okay, I think I'll do this without even using a vise, actually. So the secret to getting a scraper sharp is a nice sharp square edge. So what you've got to do is make sure you now file, or using a diamond stone or using a normal stone, whichever method you want to do, you actually produce a flat on the edge, which comes to a nice sharp perpendicular square edge to the faces. So how am I going to do this? Let me think. I will do this by, I'll just hold the file like that, and I'll make sure it's hard up against the edge of the bench, and then I will drag this backwards and forwards on it. So now I can feel there's a good sharp edge on that. Excellent. I'll carry on, do that a bit longer. Or why don't I try another method for the hell of it? How else could I do this? I'm just trying to show that it's something that can be achieved by a variety of methods. That works surprisingly well, actually. That's come to a nice sharp edge, but I mean, people used to, well, probably still do. I've seen many people sharpening scrapers like this. So all I'm trying to say basically is that what you're trying to do is a nice, hard, sharp edge. So that's done. I believe that's okay on both of those. You will inevitably have raised a little bit of a burr. So now knock that off, and using your stone or whatever method you use to sharpen to do the edge, just run it over the surface just to take a little bit of that burr off. So now it shouldn't feel like it's got a big hook on the edge, but it should feel nice and sharp. Let's see what that would do now, even if you don't raise the burr with a burnisher. I'm hoping you can see that, but already you can actually cut with it. Well, you may be able to cut with it, but we're not finished yet. So what we do now is just put a little bit of wax on all faces, all edges, or on the two faces. And then to start with, I'm holding this pretty much flat down on the surface, maybe with a slight bias towards the edge, if that makes sense. So it's sort of like a little bit like that. And I'm not killing myself with a massive push here, but I'm putting a firmish kind of push onto it. I mean, you can see how much I am or am not straining myself doing this. So, I'm not the world's strongest man. So, I mean, that's not a massive amount of effort. And what I'm doing here is actually effectively, there's the sharp edge that we've produced. By pushing down on this surface, I'm kind of spreading the edge outwards, if that makes sense. So it's spreading out, and it's forming a little bit of a sharp lip facing away from the edge. Now I've lost track of which side. I've definitely done the two on the other side. Oops, let's just do both of these. I would say a crosshead screwdriver is better than a flathead, simply because crossheads are normally cut within the diameter of the shank. Okay, so now you have this sharp edge, which has now been sort of pressed outwards to form a bit of a sharp point coming out. So what we're going to do now is we're now going to run this gently along the edge to actually sort of fold that sharp lip back outwards. And you don't want to go in really hard to start off with, because that will sort of rip up and damage that sharp lip. So gently start off with, and then maybe with a little bit more effort. And again, I'm hoping you can sort of gauge the amount of effort I'm putting in. And this process is exactly the same on curved scrapers. I will quickly go through exactly this on a curved one in a minute. And I've now done all 4 edges. Let's move this over. And I hope you can see that all 4 edges are now cutting really nicely. You can use the scraper quite differently. If you push really hard with it fairly upright, you get one effect, and you see these really quite beefy shavings. On wilder grain, you might want to actually hold it much flatter and actually at an angle, and it just takes much finer sort of shavings off, just wispy little things. And in practice, you want to play around and find what's working best for the sort of timber you're working on. Yeah, I generally do a few strokes on one side, turn it over, then, and the reason for doing that is because the edges do heat up quite a lot, and it becomes uncomfortable on the thumbs. So, you know, it's just a matter of comfort, really. You see, right? Let's do a curved scraper. This is a very useful shape of scraper. It's pretty blunt at the moment. I've been using it without sharpening it, so let's give it a go. I'll do it again using the cheapest, most basic equipment, and I'll do it holding it in my hand. So effectively, I'm going to try and keep it square, but I just work my way around so that I've got a nice sharp square edge. You can hear that file really cutting into that steel. You do need a nice hard file, or a diamond stone or diamond file, but I just like a sort of a mill file. Then, as before, I'm going to flatten take the little burr off by running the file over it. And then first of all, draw the burr. Just work my way around the whole perimeter on one side and then the other side. And then slightly off square, starting fairly gently, increasing pressure a bit. And you just do that on whichever part of the scraper you use. In the case of this particular one, it's all the way around. So that's it. Let's see if it's worked. Yep. I mean, I hope you can see that is really cutting aggressively. Let's try it a little bit more gently. Yeah, I mean, that's working. So forgive the very basic video. I mean, you know that I like to keep the editing down to an absolute minimum, but I mean, cheap mill file, old screwdriver, candle, and a cheap shop bought scraper. But normally I use this stuff, which is just old saw blades. Hang on a second. Yeah, my old Sandvik or my old Irwin saw, and this one will be being turned into scrapers before too much longer, because I ran into a nail with it the other day and I've removed a whole load of teeth here, which is painful, but there we go. But this actually makes great scrapers. That's exactly what this is, one of these saws. What else to say? If you've got any questions, leave them in the comments below, please. And I will do my best to answer specific questions about sharpening scrapers. But I hope I've kind of shown just how there's no real magic to it. There's no real secret. It's just a question of get the edge nice and sharp, draw the edge out gently, and then with a bit increasing level of force. But you know, it's not a brutish kind of job. And then draw the burr back the other way, again gently to start with. And once the penny drops, you're going to find it really simple and you'll wonder what the problem was. And as I'm sure you already know, just an incredibly useful type of tool in the workshop. Anyway, that's it from me. I hope that helps. Look after yourselves. Cheers, folks. Bye.